Hello, today we are going to talk about color in photography. You know that color is very important, and if you know my work, I pay a lot of attention to the role of color in my images. So I'm going to explain to you some ideas behind it and show examples of my own work. So let's have a look first at these two images and think about the mood that we both get from them when we look at them. So the one on the right is mainly all blue. There is not a lot of other color. The blue is dominating the composition. And we get this sort of calming and very still feeling from this image, as opposed to the one on the left, where we have this juxtaposition of the blue dominating the negative space around the model and the red of what she's wearing. You know, that there's this sort of tension between these two colors. They both are quite intense and they are complementary colors, which we are going to talk about what they are a little further in the video. So therefore, this shot appears much more intense, much more emotional, much more dynamic, even though the model is sitting still, but it's much more vibrant and more emotionally charged. So color can really change the mood of your image. So let's take a look at the theory behind it. So we have cool and warm colors that also create different mood, and according to color theory, blue or cooler colors, this side are more calming, and they sort of help the viewer breathe out, and the heart rate goes down, and all these things. Supposedly the color really works, and the warm colors, they sort of bring the heart rate up. They're more maybe happy, cheerful, all these other emotions associated with them. Red color is also a color of danger, not in all cultures, but in many. It's sort of ingrained in our subconscious, from being cavemen. Red is color of blood. So color wheel. So what is important here to know is the complementary colors, the colors that are on the opposite side of the color wheel. So if we see green and we draw a line through the center of the color wheel, we will see that the red, it is a complementary color for green. The same thing with orange and blue, yellow and purple, and all the colors in between. So when we talk about complementary colors, it's not necessarily only for primary colors. Any color in the color wheel, and it doesn't have to be the purest green. It can be a green mixed with the blue, and it can be somewhere here where it's more pale, or maybe it's more grayish, more subdued. It may still have its complementary pair. It's just maybe the tension and the juxtaposition between them will not be so obvious and not be so striking if the colors are not the purest form of that color. So let's review some ideas behind the use of this complementary colors and see how that affects the emotion and the composition. So these are some examples of color contrast. So orange and blue, and this is the type of blue that is more towards cyan, so more of a greenish blue. They are almost on the opposite sides. They're near complementary. They're not completely complementary, but they have enough color contrast, and since these are very pure, vivid colors, they create this really nice contrast, and therefore the whole image is very vibrant, very emotional, very happy and sunny, and yeah, just the emotions are very, very upbeat thanks to that combination. This example, on the contrary, has more subdued blue, and the red here, even though these would be considered as a complementary colors on the color wheel, the red here is sort of a cooler red, so it's a little more towards the blue, so maybe it's not completely on the opposite side of the circle. And it's also not the most vibrant red, so it's more this sort of pale, dusty kind of red, pink even. So even though they are afar from each other on the color wheel and can be considered a complementary pair, they create this very nice dialogue between each other and sort of support each other by this contrast, but they don't have that strong of a juxtaposition, so it's not such a strong vibrant emotion. It's more of a calming sort of combination. Another example of red and blue pair, again slightly cooler red, but this blue here is more towards cyan, so this is a more of a proper opposite side. So if our red is somewhere here, our blue is somewhere here, so they're pretty far from each other. So again, very close to complementary, but again they're more subdued. This blue is more grayish blue, and the red is also not the most vibrant red. But again, they are really good support for each other. They create that really nice feeling for the viewer. And another pair, even more subtle, even more kind of quiet, sort of, but again, creating this really nice combination, really nice dialogue. So this is very pale rose pink, and this is cool green. So if we look at the color wheel again, so pale pink will be somewhere here, like towards, if the center is the white, it could be, depending on the color system that we're talking about, the center can be the black or the white, additive or subtractive color system. Anyway, if the center is the white, so that pale pink will be very close to almost white, and then the cool green is right opposite to it, so it's a really perfect combination here. And this is much darker and this is much more pale, so they don't have that tension between each other, but they have this really nice support. They help each other pop. That pink surrounding the green makes that green more strong. That voice of green is louder. So that's why it's very eye-pleasing. So think of when you are creating your composition and you see already a color in the existing environment, think of how you can play with that color. How can you support with other colors, maybe in a wardrobe, maybe in some other props or any other things that you can introduce to support that main color that you already have. Another way of creating strong and interesting compositions and images and mood in your images is to use one part of the color wheel. So I'm calling it monochromatic. It doesn't mean they are black and white, it's just one color is basically dominating the entire picture. So for example, in this case it's red, so it will be like just this part of the color wheel, and that's what I call monochromatic. All the other colors are very neutral, so gray is not color, it's quite neutral. So but if you have within this red side of the color wheel, if you have a little bit of nuances, cooler to warmer, more brown, in maybe towards blue, more purple, it will still be within the same part of the color wheel, so it's that one dominating part of the color palette. Another example, so the dominating colors here would be this yellow-orange, slightly going into greens. The hair is again this red hair, ceilings here a little bit greenish, this is yellow again, so it's again very monochromatic. So if we look at the color wheel here, so it will be around maybe slightly on the orange side, so around this side. So very limited color palette, maybe not particularly monochromatic, but it is very limited, and that's what creates the sort of painterly look when you limit the colors to just very, very small side, very, very small slice of that pie. Another example, so it's not necessarily that can only be created on location, you can make it in a studio. This is a beauty shot, and you can see that the background is sort of matching that sort of coffee skin tone of the model, and her hair is also this red brown kind of color. Could be more red, but with this very soft light and post-production, it all belongs to the same sort of color side of the color palette. Again, maybe somewhere here, but more subdued, like not so intense, not so saturated. But again, very monochromatic, very painterly looking. This image, I'm sure you've seen it before. Again, very limited color palette. This mainly skin tones, and skin is what? It's slightly pink, maybe orange, grayish, and this one is particularly very gray, very sort of pale in general, very very desaturated sort of, but with this hints of that pale skin color, and maybe the only color that actually really pops and doesn't belong to the rest of the color palette is the blue in the eyes. How can we create accents in the composition and lead the viewer's attention through the shot with the colors? So there's this technique called color spot technique. It works in a way when you have most of your colors in your shot belonging to one side of the color wheel, or like one slice of that color wheel, and then you have one color of one element of a different color that pops. So for example, in this image we have most of it is on this side, sort of greenish bluish, maybe like a little warmer green. So these four colors are dominating the entire shot, and then we have the opposite, which is this red, that this one element that pops out is this apple. And so this apple becomes a focal center for our attention. The eye goes to it immediately, and then it starts sort of unraveling the rest of the story. Oh, okay, so the hand dropped it and the face. And so you kind of like set the direction for the viewer's eye with that color spot. Another example, again, all the colors are either neutral gray or warm, or sort of on the yellow-orange side. And then we have this one purple spot that draws the viewer's attention. We notice it, and then we kind of look at everything else. And it also helps support that yellow, that complementary purple. Example on a beauty shot. Everything is brown-orange, including her skin tone, even though it's much lighter, but still within the same color palette, within the same side on the color wheel. And then we have that one color that is the opposite side of the color wheel, which is this quite intense cyan blue sort of color. Another example on location, the whole color palette is very sort of desaturated. There's not much vibrancy going on, so it's grayish tones, maybe slight hint of a brown here. He's also very subdued, not much color, and then this red color becomes such an intense spot of color that draws the eye through the composition and makes a very strong statement here. How can we also direct the viewer's eye through the composition and tell a story with the help of color? So repeating color elements. So if you know compositional rules, when you have a repetition and you have some sort of rhythm going on, repeating lines, for example, or repeating any other elements, that will draw the viewer's eye and lead it to the focal point or the certain elements through the composition. So how the color can be very helpful in this. And for example, in this case, we have the repetition of color here and here, and maybe just a little bit here. So this color creates this dialogue, this sort of triangular dialogue between these elements here. And it really works because all the other elements are quite neutral. So it really helps this orange or red pop. In a portrait, so when you have two elements that again stand out against the rest of the palette, that really helps again maybe create a dialogue between the two colors, maybe draw the viewer's attention from one to another. Maybe it can be a metaphor to something, or maybe just, you know, the way you are telling the story, that these two elements are very important to the story. So it is crucial to have maybe not just one element, but have several throughout the shot that support each other. Another example, a beauty shot, we have blue as the sort of dominating negative space color, and then we have this yellow as a complementary color to it, but we have a dialogue. Notice even here just a little bit of it, but definitely between these two, and they support each other and they sort of hold the composition together, which is really, really important. Another example, spots of pink and lines of pink also help holding this composition together, even though it's a close-up shot, it's extreme close-up, you just see the face. So basically the skin tone becomes that sort of the color, the dominating color of this overall space of the shot, and then you have this spots of pink that are in dialogue with each other. And the last one, example, on location, again, then we see the pale blue that sets up the scene, so it's a very calming, very soft mood. And then we have this pops of yellow that again create this maybe triangular dialogue between each other and help to help the viewer to move across the shot and see what are the elements, what's going on here, and again to hold the shot together. So if you think of the colors that you are wanting to use, the mood they create, the complementary colors, how to support colors, and how to tell your story through the colors, how to help you set your composition with the help of color, every shot that you create, and if you have this in the back of your mind, will come out really, really successful. So good luck with that. If you want to see more of these videos, please like and subscribe and hit the bell, and see you next time. Thank you for watching.